This is Tech Scene Talks on Tour, the podcast about enterprise technology that brings you IT insights and analyses from events all around the globe. We cover everything, everywhere. Visit techzine.eu for more information, and don't forget to subscribe to this podcast.
Hi, and welcome to this new episode of Tech Scene Talks on Tour. I'm at Mobile World Congress. I'm at the Fortinet booth at the moment with Nirav Shah, SVP Products and Solutions. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Yeah, and I hear you have this thing called Sovereign SASE. So, I mean, it's been a while since SASE appeared on the market, on the world stage, and it was very big thing. A lot of players were immediately very active in the space. Now with Sovereign SASE, it seems to get a sort of a new dimension. So I would like to talk about that a little more. So let's start with the state of SASE. Because there's maybe a bit of confusion, maybe even about what it used to be, and then we got Unified SASE, and then now we have Sovereign SASE. Let's talk through all the different kind of forms of SASE, maybe.
Yeah, look, you're so right. If you look at today's market, post-pandemic, SASE as a term came in to bring the convergence together of networking and security. And especially SD-WAN on the networking side, converging to SSE, which is Secure Web Gateway, CASB, and a lot of other components. And for a long time, it was about having different dual or sometimes three vendors to provide SASE solution. Very quickly, a lot of customers and service providers realized that the importance of SASE needs to be unified.
Yeah.
Can a single vendor provide all the 15 core capabilities in one solution? That is what going to make it simple. At the same time, having that simple remote access for all application. Mm-hmm. That's where the unified SASE came in.
Yeah. And then there was also this brief period where SSE was suddenly very popular, which is also basically, it's part of SASE as well, right? So, and then that got a bit confusing as well, at least from my perspective.
It's the markets are out there. There is an SSE market, there is a SASE market. But if you look at all the forecasts and predictions and interest from the customers are looking for simple single vendor SASE, which is converged. Vendors have organically built. AI is built in, and not something that are stitched together from different vendors.
Do you still hear a lot of questions about what exactly is SASE? Because I remember in the beginning there was this some companies were very focusing on the definition of SASE. So if you couldn't offer it as a cloud solution, for example, it wasn't allowed to be called SASE because that wasn't according to the definition. We've moved past that stage, right? So we're not really in a kind of definition word game anymore.
Yeah, it's for us, SASE at the end of the day needs to provide flexibility in remote access. There are multiple ways to do it. Yeah. You're right. In the beginning, SASE was a cloud delivered service. SASE, when we call it FortiSASE, it is a cloud delivered service on our own global network. But then there are different ways we are seeing that SASE can be implemented for customers who has a lot of requirements around regulations, data sensitivity. Yeah. And that's where we are now going to the next phase of SASE.
Yeah, so that's called Sovereign SASE.
Correct.
I mean, and a lot of companies are bombarded nowadays by sovereign stuff, right? So you have Sovereign Cloud, and now we have Sovereign SASE. So what if you have to define it in one sense or elevator pitch? What is Sovereign SASE?
At the highest level, the Sovereign SASE brings a lot of simplicity that SASE solution provides, but give customers a control where the data is, and how can they make sure that the data and the regulation remains in their control. That's it. That's really the power of Sovereign SASE.
So and underneath it, it's still Unified SASE, right? So it builds on top of it. It's a policy layer on top of Unified SASE to a certain extent.
Exactly. I mean, typically, in a Sovereign SASE, what we want to do is for a large enterprise or a service provider, they can control the data plane. So they have their own point of presence where they can implement the data plane model, where they can do the security inspection, they can do the data sensitivity and data storage over there. But the entire control plane could be managed by us. Yeah. And that's where a lot of customers can find that good balance of not worrying about operational complexity, but at the same time, data stays with them. And a combination.
You also must get the question, why should I organize this at the SASE layer? Because a lot of companies already have lots of policies in place for where data can go, where it can't go, and all these things. Why should you do it in that layer, not somewhere else? Because I'm pretty sure they can do it somewhere else as well if they wanted to, right?
And that's where it goes back to from which vertical these customers are deploying it. I talk to a lot of customers who are in a financial and a healthcare vertical where the data is extremely important and sensitive. They want to make sure the data stays in their control. Look at the service provider. Service provider, when they look at the SASE, it's not just about the data. They also see that they are not getting the higher growth margin business. So they want to control that and provide that.
Is this also a way for companies who were originally or maybe historically not allowed to do anything, or maybe a lot of things in the cloud with SaaS solutions and all that stuff, to actually go ahead and use it now because they can do it in a way that actually is allowed?
Exactly, right? In today's space, every vendor should and must provide the flexibility. And that's where SASE is going. Because earlier, if you just tell everybody to go to vendor's cloud, sure, you can do that for certain use cases, certain vertical, but it does not work out. There are customers who also want to customize the SASE solution to their fit. They want to make it more private to their fit. And that's where the Sovereign SASE helps them bringing that.
And I imagine if you're a company and you want to start using, Salesforce, which runs obviously in the cloud, and you may not be able to or allowed to do that, now you can demonstrate that you're actually using it in a sovereign kind of way, right? So is that also one of the applications of how you can do this?
Yeah, more than a SaaS application, it's a private applications. What we have seen is for certain enterprises, there are private applications which are built on their private data center. And to access those private application, they want the inspection in their data center control. So they do that. But for sure, even the Salesforce example you gave, if they wanted to do that in a SaaS-based model, we can make sure that the data, the compliance, regulation framework, all stays with customer.
Is there any, because usually SASE works with POPs, right? With points of presence. So the more you have, the faster it is, the better it is, right? Does the same hold for the sovereign part of it? So if you have a POP in one place, it will always also have a sovereign component to that POP. So it is complete in all the different POPs that you have?
The Sovereign SASE makes sure that customers are getting that across all their POPs. Today at Mobile World Congress, I just met a very large service provider. And they asked me the same thing. They have already invested into several point of presence which they manage. What they want is they want the Sovereign SASE which they can control. So now they're going to use the newly announced Sovereign SASE and have it under their control for data and compliance, and then bring that to their customers.
How do you make sure that you don't make this too complicated? Because one of the reasons for going for Unified SASE is that it's actually a very easy, at least between quotation marks maybe. I mean, nothing is ever really easy, obviously, but it's a relatively easy way of doing SASE. You don't have to depend on applications and solutions from 3 or 4 different vendors. But now you're actually giving control back to a certain extent to the customers. So you run the risk of making it more complicated, more complex again. What do you hear from, so what are your thoughts on that?
You're talking about simplicity, right? And over last 25 years, Fortinet has invested into FortiOS, which is the convergence. And FortiOS brings the entire SASE stack into one offering. So when it was SD-WAN or when it became Unified SASE, for us, we already had those capabilities that customers can use. So now the Sovereign SASE, in the back end, customers are still using those same FortiOS, which is in their control. One thing that though we are doing, which is important, is the control plane of Sovereign SASE. How do you manage users?
Yeah.
How do you manage the policies? We want to make sure that layer we can simplify to make sure they get that value.
And they can't break the SASE by maybe doing something that they shouldn't do. Because I can imagine if you want to offer SASE and you want to offer secure access from everywhere, which that's basically what you're doing, right? And if your policy is so strict that you can't really get access anymore, then those things don't really match, right? So there must be some sort of constraints in there that you can't do that.
And that's where what we are doing is, as I mentioned, over last 5 to 6 years, Fortinet has spent a lot of innovation in FortiSASE, which is a unified SASE.
Yeah.
So in Sovereign SASE, we are basically utilizing the best practices that we did for FortiSASE for a control plane.
Yeah.
And that's a great way, right? At Fortinet, we do not want to build multiple products. Rather, we want to use the core foundation technologies and provide to the customers to provide the flexibility.
Yeah.
And that's where Unified SASE, FortiSASE, Sovereign SASE, they're all related.
Yeah. Right? But Sovereign SASE must also be a reaction to maybe new regulation coming up, and all the stuff that we hear around NIS2, DORA, you name it, all those things. Is that it's helping you probably getting the message across? I would imagine.
It definitely, I mean, a lot of things at Fortinet which we do are actually coming from direct real world customer requirements. And over last 2 years, we have seen growing regulation requirements. More customers want to do SASE, but they do not want to send traffic to vendors' SASE point of presence. Yeah. And that's where we started looking into developing this turnkey solution, which is customizable and the customers can use it.
But it is to a certain extent a niche for certain verticals, right? So do you expect this to become popular across your SASE install base?
We do think that when we look at the service provider market and telco market, this could be a game changing. Mm-hmm. Because today they do not like just using a vendor's SASE solution and do that. So this is going to be huge for them. But you're right, for large enterprise, whether it's a government entity or a financial or healthcare, this is a use case. For some specific regulated companies or countries, you will see them using that more. Yeah. But it is going to be an evolution.
So for example, big multinationals who are present all over the place anyway and have shared cloud space across nations anyway, maybe that's less of an obvious target audience for them.
Yeah, as long as they're okay with that. I mean, and that's where we have, as part of our FortiSASE, we have built a 150 plus point of presence specifically for that multinational example you gave, right? Yeah. If the data is security in terms of where the data resides is not an issue, sure, they can just use the FortiSASE. But then we are giving flexibility for those customers who have those as a requirement.
Yeah. And just finally, I mentioned it earlier as well, lots of sovereign stuff going on. What's the relation between something like Sovereign SASE and the push for sovereign cloud that we've seen, especially in Europe over the past years?
There is a direct relationship. We have seen that more and more those requirements are important. I mean, you can take a look at any of the large multi-cloud, AWS, Google, and more, who are also actively investing into that concept. Mm-hmm. And that's where we realize that Fortinet, ultimately our goal is to provide cybersecurity everywhere, mm-hmm. using AI, using convergence. We want to be at the forefront in this innovation and make sure that sovereign concept is also available into our product, into our solution. And there is no better example than starting with Sovereign SASE.
Yeah. So it's a sort of logical step in the sovereign kind of way of thinking that
exactly.
Do.
Exactly.
Well, that's interesting. Well, I think we're already out of time. I have like I said, I have an appointment in a couple of minutes, so I have to. But I think this was a very interesting chat. Very well explained. I think I understand now what it is and what it isn't, and I hope the listeners understand it as well. So thank you very much for joining.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of TechZine Talks on Tour. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. That helps others find the show, and we greatly appreciate it. If you'd like more information, please feel free to visit techzine.eu, where we cover everything, everywhere. Thanks again for listening. And we hope you'll join us again on the next episode of Tech Scene Talks on Tour.